Morena councillors. Reasonably packed agenda, so let's start. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia makinakina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, he aki ana, te atakura he tio, he huka, he hauhu, he Māori ora. Right, apologies.
Apology for lateness from Councillor Duffy.
Okay. Mover and a seconder for lateness for Councillor Duthie. Councillor Nash, Councillor Gaylor, all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Right, public participation. Oh, sorry, conflict of interest declarations. Anybody got anything that they really want to bring forward? No? Cool. Public participation. Wesley, second time running, bro. Come up to the table. And David, can you just turn the mic on if Wesley's... Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my second day back with you guys. Obviously, in the last 24 hours, we've seen more public transit related issues occurring. And obviously, the big concern is obviously you guys have been commenting on the fact that the patronage on the trains have gone down. I wouldn't be surprised because there's been a lot of train service outages due to maintenance work. And people are getting to the point where they're going to more reliable modes of transportation because they can't trust the train because it's always down for maintenance. And obviously overnight, we did have the Aratiri ferry breakdown again. So that's also causing public transit related issues because with that ferry out of service, a lot of people relying on that service are now stuck because it's not functioning. So when transit goes down, regardless if it's public transit or private transit, it can have a huge impact on everyone. Obviously, your guys' jobs is to make sure that public transit can function reliably and as best as it can while the maintenance and upgrades are occurring. And I'm quite happy to take questions if you guys have any.
Thanks, Wesley. Do we have any questions? Any observations? I think Wesley, what I can say in response is that yes, agree with you. I think we all recognise what you're saying, that if the public transport system fails, it then goes into decline in terms of patronage and it will take time for us to recover. We are aware of the issues that are in front of us on rail. I think you're largely talking about rail because our bus patronage is plus 110% on pre-COVID. But rail is hovering, Thomas, somewhere around about 70%, 75%. So we are aware of that we have been on a downward trajectory for rail, and we are in regular contact now with KiwiRail because the maintenance of the line is a KiwiRail mandate, and we can. We need better from KiwiRail, but that's a point of conversation at the moment. Thanks, Wesley.
You're welcome.
Cheers. Right. Confirmation of the public minutes of the council meeting on Thursday, the 22nd of May, 2025. Moved by Councillor Staple, second by Councillor Gaylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, none. Wairarapa Services, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. We'll invite Paul and Sam up, but just to quickly introduce this paper, an important paper for the Council. It's really looking at the disruptions on the Wairarapa line, some of the history and context to that. and importantly, it's doing two things. One, it is acknowledging on the record the frustration for our Wairarapa commuters as a result of the disruptions and the ongoing disruptions on the line, and an apology for that. But importantly, it's also outlining what is happening on the line and some ways forward, including the of fare relief for you to consider for certain services on the Wairarapa line to acknowledge the ongoing disruption and to have a pathway to having the disruption to be concluded. So I will pass the paper over to Sam and Paul for any further comment and questions. Thank you, Chair.
Morning, councillors. Sam and I are here today to provide you an update on the Wairarapa line rail service issues and actions requested by council be undertaken to alleviate customer impacts. The paper sets out potential short-term measures to acknowledge the issues experienced by Wairarapa commuters relating to the Transdev staffing issues and the suboptimal consequence of this issue that 2 services a day are being bus replaced. The recommended measure acknowledges the need to retain the 2 services for the community while Transdev train additional train managers, and that this measure would benefit those customers that are directly impacted by the services that are bus replaced. Metlink proposes that the 3:38, the 6:18 weekday services and the 2 Friday night services at 8:40 p.m. ex Masterton and the 10:25 ex Wellington refunded fares until the Transdev staffing issue is resolved, which we expect to be in mid-September. The loss in revenue to Greater Wellington of this measure is between $4,000 and $6,000 a week based on current patronage. There is also additional snapper development costs of $9,500 to enable refund fares back to passengers, and a $2,000 cost by snapper to complete a weekly upload of those refunds, a weekly bulk upload. This recommendation could be implemented from the 1st of July. We note that the cost of the bus and the driver is met by Transdev. We note that customers using the bus replacement services on the stated service still need to tag on and tag off at platform. And we note that the cost of this measure can be accommodated in the overall rail operating budget, which includes abatements applied to Transdev. We'll take the paper as read. Sam and I are here for any questions.
Okay, councillors, questions on this paper? It's been a vexed issue, the Wairarapa line. Councillor Connolly.
I don't know whether this is really questions or just reflections at this point.
But you're going to start it with a question, eh?
Well, no one else was volunteering anything, so okay, let the questioners go first.
Councillor Saw, question.
Yes. Thanks for this, and I think it's given the context and our Metlink policy seems like a good and sensible gesture for Wairarapa passengers. Just wondering if we have, I guess, assurance that the full complement of the train managers will be achieved by September, and if not, I guess, are we willing to continue this fair, this refund system, I suppose?
I think the plan is tracking really well. The caveat to that is if you don't pass where we won't have the 2 extra people.
Yeah. And then I guess the second thing is that this points to a longer standing problem around sufficient staffing and whether our operators are staffing to the level that we require. So I'm just trying to understand whether the balance of our abatements on these sorts of issues balance up with whether it's, is it for an operator they could pay the abatements rather than have a full complement of staff or keep that training going? Like, have we got that tension right, or that particular part of the contract at the right level for passengers and service?
Yeah, through you, Chair, the contractual arrangements and in terms of those things are something that we are reviewing at the moment, and this situation has caused us to look at it a bit differently. So we are looking at that to make sure that we don't have a perverse incentive. Yeah, that's really the point.
So we don't know yet. You're looking into it, but in the future that would be something that we would be okay. Cool. Thanks.
Councillor Laban.
Well, just if it's successful by whatever means, so people take the bus and they get a liking for the bus, two things come to mind. Firstly, the transition, trying to get them back on the train, and two, potentially opening an opportunity for a private operator. Do you see any of that as a concern at all, potentially?
I can only take it from a personal view. I don't know if you've done the ride on the bus. I know we had to come back on the, well, let's call it the bone rattler, from Transport Committee over in the Wairarapa. Was not a fun journey. So I don't think, and I think you can see from patronage of what patronage on those two services was, and it wasn't high, but you know, we've gone from 80 passengers down to 25 that are using the bus replacement service, and I think that there's a reason that they have to take that bus, and that's why we've sort of stayed consistent around the 20-25 people.
If I could just respond in terms of the customer behaviour and getting people back on the train, I think we don't think it's a. I think people would definitely prefer to be on the train rather than the bus, and the customer behaviour. It's the importance of getting people still to tag on and tag off. We want to make sure that behaviour is still happening, but the refund can happen rather than just saying to people don't tag on, tag off. We need the information about patronage for people to tag on and tag off, and we need people to be in that habit of that's how they use public transport.
Okay, further questions? Councillor Stoke, are you going to move? Question? Wait a second. Did you generate a question, Councillor?
So, for a long time, passengers could catch the bus from Wairarapa without being charged anything. And we actively undid that by putting Snapper on the bus. And now we're actively undoing that by allowing them to ride on the bus for free. This all seems a little bit about face, unplanned, disorganised. How do you respond to that?
So through you, Chair, the reason for instigating the payment for BRT was really because we need to make sure we're getting payment for the service we provide. It's really unfortunate that we're in the circumstance that we're in of needing to have a look at providing some, I guess it's a goodwill gesture to passengers who are really affected by the particular circumstance that we find ourselves in. It's really important that we think about this in terms of this is really a one-off because of the particular circumstances that we really that we didn't have any knowledge of prior. So this is to relate specifically to the shortage of staff for the period of time in which those services are bus replaced because of the shortage of staff and not for any other reason. So yeah,
I have a bit of a problem with that reasoning though, because this is a combination of a whole raft of issues. So at the moment, this is the significant issue, but this is not the only issue that has been affecting these passengers. And their frustrations are to do with the fact that we have cumulatively failed to provide a good service. And if we just kept providing the bus for free, we wouldn't be having these conversations. My other question is, I understand that you have changed the default penalty fee for Snapper. Can you tell us about that and how that decision has been made without councillor input?
Through you, Chair, I think that's a separate matter that isn't covered by this report.
Well, I understand that it is affecting Wairarapa people because they are the ones predominantly taking advantage of what might be conceived of as a loophole. But they're obviously not feeling like our service is providing value for money, and I agree with them.
Through you, Chair, the default fare is something that we'll be discussing in council workshop this afternoon, so I suggest we talk about that then.
Yeah, thank you. Following on from Roz, I quite like the idea of a make good, but this is for the future. It's not necessarily for the past. Is there anything that we can do to make good in respect of the issues that the Wairarapa commuters have encountered in the past? And you know, I sort of mentioned something that previously that an offline that was sort of like a coffee or something at the station. We apply something that is in the future, but also acknowledges that we did something not well. There was something that wasn't so crash hot previously, and whether there's something that, you know, it doesn't have to be a big budget item. It just has to show, you know, some you know, make good in good faith, and maybe we get people back as a result of some good PR.
Well, through you, Chair. I think that's certainly in the paper that would look at opportunities for. We've lost 30% of patronage on that line. We need to do something to incentivise people back onto it. So we're certainly looking at that.
I think it's fair to say there's been a range of things we've looked at in conjunction with the staff, with the operators. Our priorities at the moment to try and get some immediate relief in some form to the commuters of the line. So until it is then operating as we would all like, which we anticipate will be September, has been talked about a number of times, and the full complement of staff comes, we can look at other options there as well to recognise the past disruption. Don't know what that looks like yet, but there'll be other conversation with the council because there are other things we have talked about that could be put on the table. But I think the priority is to get the line up and operational to us as where it should be, and provide some immediate relief as we go through that process.
Okay, I've got a mover in Councillor Staples and a seconder in Councillor Nash. Councillor Staples.
Thank you. Thanks, Thomas. Thank you to our staff for putting this paper to us for decision. Obviously, I'm pleased because it is showing our very frustrated Wairarapa line patrons that we are listening. But I have to say, and I'm sorry to have to say this, it has been so long coming. This has been going on for a couple of months. We've been tearing our hair out in Wairarapa about this, and it has taken such a long time for us to take it seriously. Now, I know we are now, and I'm very thankful. And thank you, Paul, for the work that you're doing, especially with the SIT reps. It gives us real-time information of what is happening. But I do have to criticise that it took us so long to actually go, hey, what is happening over here, and fronting it. So thank you for doing it, but please can you assure me that if anything like this happens on any of our lines, that if we're suddenly getting cancellations and delays that are not Kiwi Rail related, somebody steps up and says, let's look at this and make sure that we're over it, because I do not believe that we were in the first instance. So that's just my little gripe, and it had to be said. Thank you for putting forward, it's not a carrot, it is really the least that we can do. Ken, if you've ridden in a bus over the hill, nobody in their right mind, unless they're perhaps a bit of an adrenaline junkie and wanted to sit upstairs in the double decker, would really want to do it. You hop on the train, it's direct, you only stop a couple of times and you get into Wellington with things going right. My last comment that I would like to make, please, to Ms. Gain and Metlink, can we please keep pressure on Kiwi Rail to step up when the delays are theirs? It's not an excuse, it's just them fronting that the delays are their fault. And I don't want to be blaming people. Our commuters, they just want the service to happen. So whether it's a Metlink problem or a Kiwi Rail or a Transdev, they just want it to happen. But it would be helpful if it is a Kiwi Rail problem, like NZTA, they step up, they say, this is what is happening, this will be the delays, just like NZTA did with State Highway 2 when it was dug up for whatever. So I just don't think that we can put enough pressure on these people to make sure that happens. Lastly, when we do have a full complement of staff, I think that is in September, hopefully, I think that is the time to look at some form of, hey, Wairarapa, come back and catch a train, because I recall not that long ago, pre-COVID, we had 9 carriages bursting at the seams at that 7:05 out of Featherston and the 4:30 out of Wellington. So it can be like that again, I'm sure, once people gain the confidence that the service is running again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Staples. Councillor Nash.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Morning, everyone. Thank you for the paper. Yeah, I think I think it's a sensible set of recommendations, and I support them. And I think there's this wider problem around rail, passenger rail, this kind of specific problem with the Wairarapa line is in the context of this wider kind of systemic problem with rail, passenger rail in New Zealand. And I think it is worth considering the fragmented nature of the kind of rail landscape, passenger rail landscape. It's sort of set up in a way that doesn't really help us. So we're not going to solve that with this paper, but I think it is worth whenever we consider tactical interventions like this, we need to also remind ourselves that we can do that until the cows come home, but until there is a solution to some of those wider systemic problems around the fragmentation of the who's in charge and ownership of assets, running of assets, maintenance of assets, running of trains, ownership of it's never really going to hit its straps until you sort that out. But anyway, I do think this is good. I agree with Councillor Staples that we should think about the recommendation 8 here, which looks at when we've got staffing levels up to where they need to be, we're going to get another report that'll look at what can be done. And I think we should look at whether there's another kind of goodwill gesture, but that should also actually be framed in the context of boosting patronage. Like you said, Councillor Staples, we want to get people back on the train, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be back on the train if it's running properly. They will eventually, but it takes a bit of time to rebuild that confidence. So I think it is worth it from a kind of, you'd look at it as a sort of lost leader, where maybe it's free patronage, maybe it's free fares on the Wairarapa line for a month or whatever to get people back on, and then you can start to build up that patronage. So I think it's worth looking at that. And I think your points, Councillor Staples, are well made around just making sure we're set up in the best possible way as an organisation, as Greater Wellington Metlink, to move fast, be agile. I think we've done it, in comparison to some other situations, reasonably well on this one, but still we can do better, and we should take that on board and see what we can do. So yeah, happy to move this. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Other councillors? Councillor Connolly.
Can you allow me to ask a question in this?
Now you want to ask
Now
a
I
question.
know. I was just thinking, once we have this technology set up so that if people catch a bus, that they can be refunded, would that be able to be used in other scenarios? So I'm thinking there have been notable examples where buses have broken down on the hill and people have had to walk across State Highway 2, for example. And it would be quite nice if outside of this policy, whenever we had a really diabolical bus trip, we could use this technology to refund people.
Through you, Chair, in order to do it in a systemic way, it needs to be set up in advance. So we can't do that. There are circumstances, as outlined in the conditions of carriage, where people can apply for a refund, which is the situation that would apply on a reactive basis, and it will be if those conditions are met, then that is the existing process.
Okay. Did you want to talk to the paper? No. Anybody else? No. If there isn't, mover in a second. We've got them. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed? No. Paper passed. Thank you. Finance update for April 2025. Ashwin, good morning.
Thank you, Chair, and morning, councillors. So this paper presents the financial results of the council for the 10 months ended April 2025. The revenue, capital and operating expenditure variances to budget are summarised on pages 22 and 23 of the report. The forecast numbers were updated in April, and since then we are not expecting any significant changes through to the end of the year. As usual, we are monitoring the Metlink numbers very closely, and we are able to provide a final update once we have got the 12 months of numbers complete, which is by the end of this month. I'll take the paper as read and happy to take any questions.
Councillor Nash.
Thanks, Ashwin. Great paper as usual. Just looking at so paragraph 9, talking about NTS. So $29 million under, and this will be released when the NTS move. Yeah, so just when the NTS system goes live. What do you mean by, does that mean when the NTS system goes live in Wellington?
Through your chair, that's correct. So this is purely related to the Wellington region costs, and at the moment they're all sitting in the balance sheet, as per the opinion that we got from PwC, which is common for everyone in the country. Once we start using the service, that's when we'll start releasing the cost back to the P&L statement.
So how long? I mean, let's just imagining that it might take some time. I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows, right? But it could take 2 years or 3 years or even 4 years. So in a scenario like that, does it just sit on the balance sheet?
Pretty much, because this is going by the accounting standards and the principles are the same, irrespective of the time required or time involved to go live with the project.
Right. And that's the only way we can consider that in our accounting system?
That's correct. With this particular thing, with the PwC advice, this is applicable to not just us, but other councils who are involved with NTS as well. So it's the same principle.
What would happen if, for any reason, the NTS project was further delayed, like significantly delayed, or cancelled? What would happen to that money?
If it's cancelled, that's a different story. So at that point, we'll have to write off the entire costs. Yeah.
Come on, Alison.
Morning, councillors. Just a comment around this. So this is an accounting treatment. It's not the funding. The project is being funded. If we wrote it off, we'd then have to consider if we reduce the debt to enable that, or whether we would take it all on in one rating year. It would be too significant. So we would have to come to you with recommendations at that point.
Okay, further questions, Councillor Saw, and then Councillor Bassett.
Does that mean that you could reallocate that if we had to find an interim measure if we have these delays or cancellations of NTS?
Through a chair, I think that will be a conversation that we'll have to look at in terms of what we can do with the budget, since it's already been rated. Because it's debt funded, the impact on rates is gradual over the term of the project. But again, it will be something that we'll have to evaluate.
Councillor Bassett.
Just one question. I'd just like a little bit of clarification around it. It talks about the one of the things is that the revenue it's certainly down, clearly down. We're talking about a rates increase of around the 10%, but we're also talking about potential challenges for next year. And you have talked in there about undertaking a sort of keeping an eye on the cost centres, and particularly looking for opportunities to reduce cost. How realistic is that, and how would you approach it?
Through your chair, in terms of the next year's annual plan, that is almost over, in the sense that we'll be presenting a final paper to councillors at the last council meeting. So those numbers have been, in a way, finalised. In terms of the overall scenario, we'll have to evaluate. At the moment, I think the main risk area is in the public transport space, as you're well aware. But in terms of the other areas, that is tracking as for what we are expecting it to track.
Okay. Any other questions? Ali?
I could just add to that if you liked, through you, Chair. We work to a balanced budget, as councillors know, and for the next annual plan, so for 25-26, we have already extensively revisited patronage and revenue forecasts. So at this point in time, we are confident with the work we've done in that space to reduce costs and reduce forecasts in line with that.
Okay, thanks, Ellie. Right, papers for information. So thanks, Ashwin and Ellie. Resolution to exclude the public. Moved Councillor Gaylor, seconded Councillor Bassett. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Right,